think we're recording now. So yeah, here at the very beginning of this challenge, I would start probably not even by looking at user stories yet, but just thinking about what I want my schema to look like. Professors have a name, age, and a specialty, students having a name and age, and then most importantly, arguably, this many-to-many relationship here between professors and students. So there are a couple of ways that I think I would think about tackling this. If you really wanted to TDD, you could definitely go write relationship tests on the models or for models and write validations, but I think I'm just going to start with the migration today. So let's see. I think I'll start with professors and just with a Rails G migration. Oh, and the other thing is, I think we have to bundle. Let me double check that. Right? Yeah, we're going to bundle install and make sure we have 0 tests. It's good, but I'm going to decrease the size of this window a little bit. Cool. All right, now I'm going to Rails G migration, add professors. Let's see, we had a name, had an age, and we had a specialty. I think that's right, but we'll double check the migration to make sure it looks good. Oh, I missed something. Rails G migration, add professors.
I think integer was spelled wrong. Integer.
You are so right. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Not that. Not that. We're going to delete this first.
Or no?
No, I think what I did that time was, I don't know if y'all noticed this, but there's something weird in my Z shell config where my cursor is like way ahead of my actual text. So I'm just going to try to do this again. I think you can call these migrations anything you want within reason, like you don't want to use any designated terms like tests or whatever, but I think add professors is probably fine for this. So add professors, name, string, spell this right, integer. All right, how about now? No, I spelled something wrong again, didn't I? That's okay. What I can do, if it didn't generate the way that I thought it would, and I have done this before, done this pretty often, is just jump over to the docs. Because I've done this before, I know that the docs here for the migrations of this version are okay. So I'm just going to jump down to something like this, and and we're just gonna, just to make sure, I always seem to get the syntax confused as to which comes first, like the data type versus the column name. So I like to be very sure, copy paste, and then just be really intentional about replacing. So actually, I think this might be a different method though. Is it create table and then it takes a block? Yeah, that was what I was looking for as well. Gosh. This indentation, I came from VS Code, so this indentation is not what I'm used to, but here we go. Okay, so we have name, we have specialty, integer for age. I like to just put timestamps on everything. Yeah, that all looks good to me. But please, if y'all notice me making any typos, et cetera, or have questions, feel free to interrupt at any point.
The products part?
Thank you.
3.
Thank you. Yeah, professors. Okay, I'm gonna look at that one more time. Add professors. Yes, that's fine. Change, create table. I have all my T dot for all of these. All right. Got anything else wrong? We will debug together. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and drop a database that I had used before when I was first looking at this. So now Rails DB create. And I think, Adam, yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. On the Rails G migration. I've seen it where someone did it with snake case instead of Pascal. Is that okay? It just seemed like a nicer option in terms of like seeing individual words and then being able to know that they're like spelled right rather than them all crammed together, which to my mind is harder.
That's a good point. I don't actually know the answer to that, but I say let's try it for our next migration. I think that's just convention, and you could change anything in the migration before you run it. So I will, I'll try that with the next one.
Thanks.
We can find out together. Sure thing. So now I'm going to migrate and just double check my schema. I'm going to try to do this with every migration. Okay, so professor's name, specialty, age, and then timestamps. That looks good to me. So let's try that for our next migration. So Rails G migration, and let's see. Let's do students next. So we called that one add professors. Let's say add students and see if this works. And I think they just had a name and an age. So name, string, age, and signature. I think that all is fine. Yeah, so it looks like I need to double check my actual syntax for this migration command because I'm not getting the auto-generated stuff here that I would expect. But to answer your question, Adam, this doesn't look any different. So I guess it's just, you know, personal preference. And probably the, whatchamacallit, probably the Pascal case is considered like the standard or what is given in the documentation because it's a class and it, you know, having that reflect the class name seems to make sense, but I don't think it matters. Let me double check here. Timestamps, yeah.
James,
Katie, go ahead.
I had a quick question. So when you're doing like the Rails G migration add students, would it be different if you did like Rails G migration create students? Would that give you the create table and what you're expecting inside of the change method?
Maybe. I want to try it because if that's what it is, I definitely learned something today. Thank you for that suggestion. Create students. That actually makes a lot of sense. So let's hope. I bet. You are absolutely right, Katie. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Cool. So that's good to know. And yeah, I noticed a couple of people mentioning the timestamps thing. We don't really expect this. It wasn't part of the challenge README or anything like that. It's just a habit that I'm into because that's bitten me in production where I didn't add timestamps to something and then it became a major bug. So it hurts me personally to not put timestamps on my tables, but you don't have to do it if it's not called for. Okay, so now we have that second migration for create students. I'm going to try migrating. Excellent. Okay, look at the schema. Now we have our name and age on students. Okay, and so then this is where it starts to get a little bit more challenging, right? Because we have a many-to-many relationship. And that means we're going to need to have a join table, and I'm going to do that by, let me see if I can remember the syntax the first time. Rails G migration create professor, or students, I think makes the most sense to me. And we'll do, I feel like it's professor references and student references. We'll see. Okay, I think that all looks right. We have our foreign key true. These are singular. Yeah. So a common gotcha for me here on the migration is to like switch these two around or not remember to keep these as singular. Pluralization in Rails is always a time, but I think this looks good. So I'm going to migrate. and double check my schema. I have these foreign keys here. I think that looks good. I have this here, which also looks good, my professor students table. Okay, so I think this is all good. And without starting on TDD, if you wanted to go into like your Rails console and try making a few records, actually that might be good for testing in the browser anyway. So let's do that, Rails C. And then we'll move on to starting some tests. Professor.create, name, Dumbledore, age 200, specialty, master. I think that's fine. Oops. Okay, why not? Oh, yeah, sorry. We actually do have to make those models before we can do that. So maybe testing is a better place to start. We do have our features in our models folders here. I'm kind of debating on where to start, but it's probably worth it to start with model testing and just make sure all our relationships are set up the way we want. So professor spec. And we'll do acquire Rails helper. And here, giving the describe block just the class name, the name of the model that we're testing. And then I think it makes sense to do a couple of describe blocks for the relationships and the validations getting started. So, but now that I mention it, I don't think our spec said anything about validations. So, and I don't remember seeing that in the user stories. So I think I'm just going to do relationships for now. It should have many professor students. I think that's the right syntax. So let's start there, and we'll do get out of this and bundle exec models. Maybe, hello? Okay, uninitialized constant professor. So we'll go into app models and we'll make a file called professor B. And let's just run our test again for fun and see what failure we get. Has anybody ever gotten this error before, out of curiosity, on anything? Unable to autoload constant professor, expected this file to define it? No? Cool. Yeah, I thought I'd pause here and mention it because it's maybe a few people have gotten it, but it's a good one to, this one always reminds me to double check my spelling, because usually what it means is it found, when you see this unable to autoload constant, it found the file that that's supposed to be in, as you can see here, but it doesn't actually have a constant, or it doesn't have a class. It doesn't know what you mean. So maybe if I had like, I wonder, this is kind of an experiment. Profess, I'm going to put an extra S in there. I wonder if we'll get the same error. We actually got the same exact error, and it's because I misspelled professor. So that's a good one to watch out for.
You have an extra F.
Thank you. That one wasn't intentional. I was just wondering, does that have two Fs? Okay. Okay. Sorry.
It's okay. I was going to say, is this at all related to like when you get the error that says like that something's like disabled or something like that? Where
have you by chance seen that in like feature specs most frequently?
Probably.
Yeah, sure. What that makes me think of, and it might not be the exact same thing, but that makes me think of the failure that I've seen a lot that's unable to find element such and such that was not disabled.
Yeah, it sounds very right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
I think that's something to check in the view, and that could also like that could definitely be a spelling error, or it could also be it could be a problem with your HTML, like your capybara is looking for a certain element and either the element is disabled for some reason or it just can't find it. It'll spit back that error.
Got it.
Cool. So now I think we do actually have the failure we would expect. It should have many professor students. So would love to hear from somebody. Where do you think what do you think we should do next?
Controller.
Controller? Okay. Can you tell me why?
Yeah, because if we want to utilize that model, well, we probably actually want to go routes then controller.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with like going to routes before the controller. However, I think I'll wait until I see a routing error to go there because I'm trying to TDD as much as possible. Good idea though. Like that we're gonna get there soon enough. Any other ideas or like suggestions?
Would you set up your relationships so your belongs to relationships?
So we could say this belongs, or let's see. No, we would want this to this has many professor students, right? And that's what it's looking for here in this test. So what error, and I'm sorry, I noticed a couple of like pop-ups just now that said people were raising their hands and I don't see hands like on videos. So if I don't get to your question, feel free to just jump in. Right, what was I saying? Oh, do we think that this is gonna work or are we gonna get another error or what do we predict? Yeah. Undefined method has many for professor class. So this is an interesting error, but I think the next place to maybe look is at the model that we're trying to associate with, and we see that it doesn't exist. So I'm going to go ahead and create that file. ProfessorStudent.rb. And actually, we could just breeze past it, but this is probably worth going into also because this has tripped me up before. It says like, we don't have that method for the professor class. I was about to ask and I just saw it in chat. Exactly, that's what we're missing, application record. So now it should actually have access to the Rails gems and specifically what we're looking for with active record and being able to associate. So let's just see where our test gets us now. I'm gonna try to clean up my windows a little bit. So, okay. This test is passing. I want to be conscious of time, so I'm not actually going to write I'm not going to write model tests for professor student at the moment. Hopefully we have time to come back, but let's just go ahead and add the belongs to professor. I'm going to try to speed through that same process for the student spec and the student model. So student spec, I'm going to grab this part. And now we're describing the student model. And we'll say describe. Yeah, relationships. Did I actually get that done in this one? I didn't. I said I was going to and I didn't do it. So describe relationships. Cool. So this is going to be the same thing, I believe. Let's run the test. Oh, that's interesting. We don't even have, so something might be, if you notice anything about my test that's off, please shout it out. I definitely didn't expect that to pass, this is a great example of why we run our tests. Respect describe student. Maybe it's because we are writing a test for a model that doesn't exist. So let's just create an empty model for student and see what we get. Yeah, class student, remember to inherit. I expect this spec to fail. It doesn't. Oh, that's bizarre. Let's see.
Jameson, are you in your spec that you're running? I think you're just running professor spec.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm thinking about reorganizing these into other folders as well. There we go. That's exactly what I expected. But I think I'm going to leave them as is. So now this is failing the way that we want it to. I'm going to do the same thing I did for professor. Okay. Sorry. Sorry, I'm in my head a little bit. I was just trying to remember a few things. Okay. Has many professor students. And now I think I just want to go back. I guess I'm already here. I'll start and I'll say it should have many professors. I think we can do it this way. I might have to double check this syntax unless somebody knows it off the top of their head, but I think we can test this here by saying through professor students. Am I running the right thing? Yeah. Okay. Wrong number of arguments. Yeah, I'm going to double check this should have matchers docs. Would load. So let's see. I think I need a many maybe. Oh, interesting. Okay. Have many and belong to. Oh, thank you, Dominic. I see that in the chat. Yes. So I wonder if yeah, I'm going to use the parens. I don't know if it's conventional with shoulda matchers to use parens or not, but that makes the most sense. So through professor students. Okay, that looks better. Let's try this back. Yeah, so no association called professors. We're going to go over here, and after the has many professor students, has many professors through professor students. And I've run into, I don't know if anybody else has run into this before, but I've run into problems when I get these out of order. So just something to note, it's better to put the join table first in these relationships. So let's try that. Okay, that looks good. Because I already know that I'm going to have to look at that syntax word for word, I'm going to copy and paste it over here. I'm very intentional about my naming there. It should have many students through professor. Yeah, I think that looks good. Let's run that test. Yep, looks good. And I think actually this line is going to be exactly or almost exactly the same. So yeah, I'll just do that. My goodness. My goodness. Okay. All right. I expect this to pass now and to be pretty much all good to go with our relationships. Oops. Oh no. Misspelled something. Has many students through professor students. Should have many students through. Undefined method class name for nil class on line 6 of professor spec. Oh. 1 second. We're definitely in professor. Professor has many, should have many. I noticed my syntax highlighting is different, so I know I feel like it's probably here. Does anybody else see what I'm missing? Let's see, was I running the right spec? Yeah, professor spec. Because it was on line 6 through. Are my describes spelled right? Yeah. I'm sorry, y'all. This is part of the fun of live coding. Describe relationships, do, and it should have many professor students. It should have many professor students. I'm going to type this line again. Oh my gosh, I know this is something so goofy and small, but I don't know what it is right now. Okay. That is bizarre.
Could it be something in your model that's misspelled?
Yeah, that is very possible. Let's look there, because this doesn't indicate that, but it's very possible. Has many students through professor students. We know this one works, so I'm going to open up professor over here. Oh, oops, wrong one. Student should go over here. Has many professors through professor students.
When I was doing the practice repos, I also had to set up the joins in order for that error to pass, because I have seen it before. So
Interesting. Everything, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's just basically it. That's
Okay.
just the way that I've seen it pass. So like for professor student, I just write the test for it as well.
Right, gotcha. Oh, you know what? Very good call, Brisa. I think we're missing this. I feel like I've taken up a lot of y'all's time writing these, so student singular. Yeah, it would be a good idea to write these relationship tests for the join table as well. But I think you're on a good track. Let's see if adding this belongs to student fix this problem. I haven't run into that error before, so that's super interesting. Undefined method class name for nil class. I don't, that's so interesting. I did not get that this was missing from that error message, but good thinking. Thank you, Brisa.
Jameson?
Yeah.
It's actually discussed in the many-to-many lesson. It says like that it warns about that error and then just says like, you're not going to know, like, it's not going to be descriptive in terms of how to fix it.
Wow, that is good. I totally missed that like in the lesson plan and also haven't run into it before. So I'm super glad that they included it. Now I know. Okay. Yeah, thank you everybody for your patience there. That's just part of it's the nature of the beast. So we have our relationship set up. They are pretty much tested. Since this has been such a pain, I should probably practice what I preach and say Professor 1F student spec. Yes. Oh, that's a folder. Not in the folder. Okay. Delete that first. Spec models. New file. Professor student spec. Yes. Okay. We'll just grab this. And describe relationships. Yeah, I think we are only, oh, I don't know what that shortcut was, but that's handy. It should belong to professor, should belong to students. And let's really quickly see if we can get this working. Professor, student, spec, yes. Expected professor student to have a belongs to association called professors. I feel like maybe we have a spelling thing going on here.
I think your join table has an S on it for professor students, doesn't it?
You're probably right. Well, let's see, professor student, and then let's look at
okay,
the
never mind.
schema.
What about in the professor student spec, your belong to, should those be plural or singular?
Yeah, that's kind of where my mind was going next. I'm pretty sure you're right in that these should be singular. Yep, and that all works as we expect. Okay, with some experimentation and with tests to tell me all the mistakes I'm making, as well as y'all's help, thank you for that. I feel pretty good about where we're at as far as our many-to-many and our relationship tests. And I think our models are set up with what we need for now. Does anybody have like questions so far, or is there anything we should discuss in more detail? Okay. Awesome. All right, so let's take a look at these user stories. I think this is a good time to move on to those. Actually, why don't we take a quick pause and come back at 1:39? Don't want to string y'all along for too long without a pause. Dominic, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. When it comes to a join table, is it necessary to validate the presence of the IDs that you're expecting, or does your join table automatically assume those are necessary to create a row?
I don't know 100% for sure, but I'm pretty sure that's a built-in behavior to Active Record and that we don't need to test it. Now, if I had something else on my join table, like a status, that I'd never wanted it to be blank, I would probably write a validation test for that and make sure that we have validations on that column. But I think IDs should be kind of like how we don't have to explicitly include IDs in a lot of other Rails stuff for regular tables. I'm pretty confident we don't have to double check those in our validations or validation tests.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I was just thinking, I think maybe with the schema where it says foreign, something to do with the foreign key references, it might be doing that. I don't know.
Gotcha. Yeah, I do think that as long as our schema looks the way that we expect it to, we can trust Active Record to have tests written in their library to make sure that behavior is working. Okay, so let's actually make it, let's make it 1:40. Sorry about that, y'all. See you in 5. All right, we're at 1:40. I'll give people a little bit more of a chance to get back. Just to kind of talk through the next steps. Now that we are in a good place, or we feel like we're in a good place for what we need right now, based on this part of the overview, I'm going to move on to user stories and start by writing a feature test. So I'm going to grab this user story and just bring it over to my editor. Excuse me. And I think I'm going to go ahead and make a folder for professors. And this starts with the show page. So I think that's the spec I'll start with first. Yeah, when I visit a professor's show page. It's a new file, show spec. Okay, here we are. Now I'm going to paste the user story just so I have it handy. As a visitor, when I visit a professor's show page, then I see that professor's name, age, and specialty, and I see all the names of the students associated with this professor. So to me, that sounds like a couple of different it blocks. That sounds to me like we could have it displays the, I'm going to put this in double quotes, displays the professor's information. I think that's fine. And then another one, which I will X out for now, it lists the names of the professor's students. Okay, and I put that X in front of the it so that this won't run. It's fine because we don't have anything in here, so I don't actually need to, but you can skip your test this way. So it displays the professor's information. What's the very first thing I'm going to do as a user if I were a user expecting this behavior? What's the first thing we need to lay out in our test? Or what is one place we could start in our test? I guess I'll open it up like that, because you could start in one or two places. Any ideas?
Where you're trying to go, like the route?
Yeah, that's, I think, what I want to do first. So visit professors, and I'm going to assume that I have a professor and put the idea in there. So this means we need something else, right? What else are we going to need for just this part to work?
To create a professor?
Yeah, exactly. So when I say work, I don't mean for the test to pass. I mean for us to actually be able to go to that URL with Capybara. So yeah, exactly. Professor equals professor.create. Give them a name. Group and specialty. Moon magic. I don't know. Okay, so now we should be able to go to this professor's show page, and I'm going to start simply by saying, like, I expect this page to have content. Let's just start with the professor name and see if we can get that passing. You know what? This is simple enough. I think just starting, because we've broken this out into a couple of different it blocks, let's just start with the professor's information and then do the like all the student names separately. So we want to have the age, and we also want to have. Okay, so when I run this test, we haven't built any of this yet. Anybody want to guess what error we're going to get when I run this test?
Routing.
All right, let's see. No route matches. Awesome, Jake. Thank you. So let's go to the routes file and make that route. Cool. So now we have the route. Anybody else want to predict what our next test failure is going to be?
Controller.
Let's see. Uninitialized constant professor's controller. Yep, exactly. So come on. And just to be super thorough, I'm going to run this test again, and we'll see a different kind of error. That autoload constant one that we talked about earlier. So class professor's controller. Okay. I'll take another prediction. What error are we going to get now? We won't do this every single time, but since it's our first user story. Any ideas? What error are we going to get?
No view.
No view? Let's see. Yeah, not quite. We still need to put an action, but I think the no view would be the next thing most likely. So let's just go ahead and walk through that. Def show. I'm not going to put anything in there for now. Now we get this missing a template, the no view error. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to make a professor's folder, and then I'm going to give that a show.html.erb. Okay. Now that we have that template, we have that view, I'm going to run it again. And now it's actually looking for the stuff that we're expecting in our test, right? So, okay, so let's do, we can dream drive this a little bit. Is this the shortcut? Yeah. So I think ideally I would want this view to have access to a variable called professor. And probably for now, all I want to do is the least amount possible to get this passing. And I'm going to give it name, age, specialty. Okay, let's see. So I'll take one more guess for this user story, or for this, I guess, it block in the user story. What is going to blow up now? What's this next error going to be?
Undefined variable, professor.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's see. And that's not what the error says exactly, right? But we can put together based off of what we know that it's saying we don't have a method name for nil class. So whatever we're calling that on, in this case, at professor is nil. So let's go set that up in our controller at professor. Because we have our route set up, we're giving our route an ID. We should be able to get that in our params. And I think this is all we need for this to pass. Let's see. Awesome. Cool. So now we can go back over and do the rest of that test. At this point, also, I think these tests are going to need a lot of the same information. So I'm going to set up a before each. And this way, in all of our it blocks will have access to this. And these do need to be instance variables, if I remember correctly. So now we have, before I actually go and write the rest of that test, I'm going to make these changes. I'm going to refactor a little bit, and then I'm going to run the test again to make sure I didn't break anything. Oh, I missed one. These. I missed several. Great. Okay, so we have pretty much, I'm going to say that we are done with these parts. Now all we have left is to see the names of the students associated with this professor. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to the professor show. Oh, and before I forget, we don't need that because So now we have access to it on line 6. And let's see, we're going to expect page to have content, and I'm going to need to set up these variables, but let's say student 1 name and student 2 name. Does that seem reasonable? Okay, so now we'll do students. Could do this a couple of different ways. But I think, since we have these relationships set up, it makes sense to maybe do at professor dot students. Pretty sure that has to be plural dot create. We can create through our association. We can create through this existing instance here of professor. So students need a name and an age. We'll do name Harry Potter, age 18. And we'll do Luna Lovegood, and we'll make that at student 2. Okay, so now we have, sorry, I don't mean to be scrolling that much. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness, screen management. There we go. Cool, sorry about that. Okay, so we have our before each setup with a professor and 2 students. We're going to go visit the professor show page on line 20, and we're going to expect both Harry Potter and Luna Lovegood to be there. And maybe it's worth actually making this a little bit more meaningful at this point. We'll interpolate. Wasn't exactly part of the user story, but I think it's reasonable to add in if you felt so inclined to say something like name, student name. Yes, I think that looks good. And I'm going to expect a failure here. I also think I'm going to just run line 19. So that I'm running this test and I don't have to worry about the tests that we wrote before. Expected to find text name Harry Potter in Lupin 50 Moon Magic. I could probably add some formatting in here to make this make more sense as well. So I think where I would be inclined to go next would be back over to the show page and Dream Drive again and say, okay, what do I want this to look like? Let's give it some degree of separation here. We'll do H2, where's my hotkey? Professor name. That'll be fine. Come on, H2. Okay, so now we have hopefully a little bit of communication here about what all these things are. I think professor name is fine, but maybe it would be worthwhile to add in a p tag here and say age and specialty. And again, this isn't absolutely necessary. I just feel it's a good thing to do if we have to open up the page and look at what is on there with save and open page or something like that. I would like for it to make sense to me. So I went ahead and added those. And now we can start thinking about that test we were writing. Let's say we're going to have to iterate through a few things, right? Professor dot students each do student, oh, come on. I'm moving stuff around on my screen. There we go. Let's see, this is chaining on some things in the view, but I think for now, let's just get it working and then maybe we can talk about refactoring. So we'll do, oops, and I don't want that equals, that will give us unexpected results. And we'll say student name. And I think in our test, we asked for that to say, we should do probably a p tag here, and name. Then we interpolate the student name with an ERB tag. I think that all looks good. I'm going to, this is very irritating to have to do every single time. If coincidentally, if anybody knows how to get it to default to this HTML Ruby ERB for syntax highlighting, I would love to know about that. Okay. So we have like our header here, professors, students, professor.students.each do, and then we give them a name. Let's just run our test and see where we get. So that works. Okay, this I think pretty much gets us through the functionality of user story 1. Does anybody have questions or comments or things they'd like to talk about before we move on? Cool. I suppose while we're here, well, I think this is something I would like to refactor, but I think it's a small enough offense that let's just continue and see about getting through user story 2, because I want to be, oh, I see somebody raise their hand. Jordan, yes.
Yeah, sorry, my internet's been breaking up a little bit. Were you asking about if anybody knew how to change the highlighting of the HTML?
Yeah, sorry about your Zoom stuff. That's a bummer.
Oh,
But what I was asking was, so in the HTML.erb, I prefer this HTML Ruby ERB, this one.
Yeah, okay, that's one I use too usually.
Yeah, do you happen to know how to get it to default to this? Because I have to change it on every file.
I don't know that.
Okay.
Well, that's the part of it. Yeah, that's a good question. Cool.
Thank you, though. Yeah, if I find out, I'll let everybody know, but that's something I'm still hunting. That would be very convenient if everything just defaulted to this, I forget what it's called, but this default syntax highlighting. Excuse me. Okay, if that seems reasonable to everybody and makes sense, I'm going to go here and copy user story 2. Maybe, there we go. And this is going to be for the professor show page as well. So I'm going to make that part of the show spec. Let's see. So these are two, I'm trying to think in my head right now, what's going through my head is I'm trying to think about how I want to organize my test and if I want another describe block. But I think for today, for our purposes, it's fine to just put this in another it block. So it shows, what was it? The average age of all students associated with this professor. Let's do it the same way we did the others. So it shows, to be consistent with our other descriptions, it displays the average age of the professor's students. Cool. So before we get too far into this, let me think through my question. We're doing something new here by averaging the age of the students associated with the professor. Where do we want this functionality to live? Katie?
Probably on the model, I would think you would want that calculation.
Yep, I agree. It should be on a model. And do we want a class or an instance method? What I would say for this, don't let me cut you off if anybody has a thought, but
can I try?
Yeah, go for it.
I was thinking more of an instance method, since it's like it's the students associated with one particular professor rather than all the students as a whole.
Yep, I absolutely agree. That's where I would have started as well. Harrison, did you have anything to add to that or a question?
I was going to say the same thing.
Awesome. No, that's cool. We're all on the same page. So let's do this. We're going to go there and then we'll continue with our test, but I like that we have a plan for where we're going to make that new functionality live. So we are going to expect the page to have content, average student age, maybe. And then looks like these two are the same age. Maybe let's add one more student with 17. And if I am mathing correctly, I think we're still going to expect an average age of 18. So we'll interpolate that. Expect page to have content average student age. 18. Yeah, we'll do it that way. And I think that's really all we need here for this story. Let's run our test and see it fail. And now we're not on line 19, we're on line 27. Yeah, and it didn't find it, right? So continuing with how we've been doing this in Dream Driving, I think we have the age, specialty, and name. Maybe we put that right underneath this header. I think that makes logical sense. And we would want this to probably be in a P tag and say average student age, and then have the ERB tag. And we'll call this is going to be, like we discussed, a professor instance method. What do we want to call this method? We're kind of dream driving here. Anybody have a suggestion? Yeah, Katie?
We could call it average age of students.
I like it. I think you could name it anything you want, but I like that this is very specific and descriptive. Average age of students, plural, yeah. Okay, so this is, like we saw earlier, it's probably gonna give us that undefined method or undefined method or variable average age of students. I think we saw that somewhere before. Yeah, exactly. Undefined method, average age of students. What was that wizardry of a shortcut? Which one, Tommy? I just saw that in chat.
Oh yeah, no, it's, I'll say it.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm good.
Cool, just wanted to make sure. Yeah, the shortcut I use for ERB tags is actually a package. It's the command shift dot, but I think there's one built into Atom, so you don't even need that snippet. Anyway, let's go over to our professor spec and describe instance methods. And we're kind of now hopping between specs, but I think it's worthwhile to come over here and actually test drive a model, use a model test to test drive this behavior. So we'll say describe, I think it's a # for instance methods, and this will be average age of students.
Jameson, quick question.
Yes.
In the setup that you have when you added a third additional student, I think you left it as student 2. Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out. Perfect. Okay. Now that I'm here, I'm wanting to check stuff. I think everything else is probably good. This tab, there we go. So describe average age of students. This is the only test we have right here right now. So I think maybe what I'll do is just grab these, excuse me. And then we'll say expect professor, average age of students to equal 18. Pretty sure that's what we're expecting, right? Let's run this test. Thank you all for your patience with my typing. I'm not a typist. Undefined method, average age of students. Okay, could I get a volunteer to just navigate me through writing this method? Sure, go ahead, Jake.
So we're going to start with def, and it's a class method, no, it's an instance method, so def average age of students. we're going to pass it in. How are we going to find the professor? Are we going to pass it in an ID? Oh, no, we're just going to run it on there. So then it's going to be that. So it's going to be professor.students.average age. So you can do self.students. And we're going to want to use AR, not Ruby. So students dot, God, I'm so bad at AR. I shouldn't have volunteered for this.
That's fine. This is good learning, good practice. I think you're on a good track here. Sorry, what were you going to say?
So, I mean, you can do the dot where, but you want all the students. So really, I don't know what like the AR calculation is for average.
Gotcha.
Sorry, I'm trying to Google it as I'm being recorded.
You are totally fine. I think, it's very possible that I'm incorrect, but I don't think we actually need a where.
We don't. You can just do dot average. And then in parentheses, you'll put in colon age.
Awesome. That looks good to me. My guess would be we might not even need this self, but I'm not too worried about that right now. Let's just run the test and see where we get. Uh-oh, what did I do? I have a syntax oopsie in my show or in my professor spec. I didn't give it an it block. Whoops. It returns the average student age. I think that's fine for what we're doing right now. Oops. I'm glad that I made that mistake. Has anybody ever gotten this error before? No? It seems like a couple people have, yeah. Expect is not available on an example group like a describe or a context block. It is only available from within individual examples. So this is a pretty helpful error. It kind of gives you an idea of what to fix, but it has come up a lot for me throughout like my time at Turing and beyond, where I'll have an expectation where I didn't mean to have it, or I forgot an it block or something like that. So just something to keep an eye on. And yeah, I won't go into too much more detail because some of that has to do with other things we haven't gotten to in our spec yet, but I'm glad I made that mistake because this is good to know about. Okay, so it returns an average student age. Yeah, I think that all looks good. Oh, I feel like we need something else in this method based on the error we got back. Anybody have an idea what it is? Instead of getting an integer back, we got this weird float from our average age.
There are .2i at the end of it.
Let's try it. Oh, it's actually 17. I guess with the math, that makes sense. Let's double check. 18, 18, 17. Because this is going to bother me if I don't change it. That seems correct, right? Like 18, 18, 17.
Seems like it's rounding down.
It's rounding down. That's a good point. Maybe we should put something, put some logic in there for whether we want to round down or round up. If let's just say, for the sake of the example, we want to round up, where would we put that logic?
The round preferably be in the view.
Yep, I like it. I agree. I think that's good. So we'll do average student age, round. Shoot, I don't actually remember the syntax here, but maybe y'all can help me out. We pass it an integer, right? But I don't know if there's a different syntax for choosing up or down. We can also Google it together.
I tried just doing round one and see what happens, maybe.
Yeah, let's do that. Expected 18 got 17. I think this is probably worth looking at some documentation for us. So, round is Ruby, right? Oh my gosh. good for me to know. Ruby numeric round. I'm just going to go to API doc. Oh, no, here's the Ruby doc. Never mind. Come on. Okay. Returns float rounded to the nearest value with a precision of digits.
You can add dot seal, like sealing, CEIL, and a little round up.
Nice. I like it. So could you walk me through that? Do I take off this argument?
Yeah, take off round and do dot CEIL, but then you also might have to make it a float. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, so let's see. This is really interesting because now I'm wondering if this is still okay to have in the view. I think we'll just make a decision and say, yes, that's fine. Sorry about that, y'all. Had something distract me. So let's go back over here to the view and we'll say to F seal to I. That's a lot, but let's just see if it works for the sake of learning about this. Yeah, that didn't actually turn it into an integer. So maybe we don't quite undo what we did in the model just yet. I'm curious what we'll get if I run this test now. Yeah. I'm not sure about this. Here, how about we go into Rails console and do some experimentation. That way we don't have to wait on our tests every time. Okay, so let's say P equals professor. I don't think we have any yet. I meant to do this earlier and it totally slipped my mind. Okay, so make a couple of students. Okay, so clean that up. We have P for our professor, students. Okay, we have 2 students and both of their ages are 89. I'm actually going to say student. I should have made that a different age. So I'm going to say get student 2 and update age to be 1. Or no, we'll do 10. I should have made these easier numbers, so I'm just going to do that to make our lives a little bit less painful here. So let's try calling P dot, what do we call it again? Average age of students. Hmm, 15. So if we wanted to round.
I wonder, Jameson, if you did like a round 2, 2, would that make a difference?
Like that?
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
So if we went and we changed this to, I don't know, let's say like 19. And then we did that without the round, we get 19. If we do that with the round, we get 19. Okay, I think this probably has to do with the, yeah, I'm not mathing very well today. I apologize, y'all. But I think for today, this was a worthwhile exploration. Let's stick with round 2 and see if that helps our tests at all. So we said we want that round in the view. Let's run our test. That did not do what I expected. So this is uncovering like uncovering that I have like a little bit of a misunderstanding of how average works. Again, glad that like we're making these mistakes, or that I'm making these mistakes and we're talking about them together. For now, for the sake of time, I think I am like, obviously it's not great to just go change your test based on the result you get, but instead of doing a deep dive into active record average, I think today we'll say this so that we can get back to our other feature test. Okay, so let me double check. I think this is all set up the way that I want it. So let's run the feature test now. R spec. Features, show spec, I think I called it. Yes. Expected to find average student age 18. Yeah, I think this is because I didn't actually update the feature test to match our model test. So I'll do that right now. And I do think that this gets us to a good spot for user story 2. Cool. I haven't even like looked at the time. How are we doing on time? Okay, good. So let's also double check the user stories. We're doing these first 2 in this session right now. As a visitor, when I visit a professor's show page, then I see the average age of all students associated with this professor. Just for the sake of being thorough, let's actually go to our local host and see what this looks like. Don't have a root page, so I'm just going to go to professors 1. I don't think we have an index yet either, right? So here we go. We have a name, an age, a specialty, their students, the average age, and then the students that we made in the console. So this isn't pretty data, but we do know that this is all kind of lining up with what we would expect from our test, right? Cool. Any questions or comments before we move on and see if there's anything we can refactor? I also don't want to keep anybody from going to the other session if that's a thing people are interested in. I'm not sure if they're still running. Yes, Jordan.
I'm not sure if we're still interested in this, but I think if you did the round 0, it might work, or round -1, one of those.
Well, I mean, I think we have time to try it if that's all right with everybody.
Interesting.
Yeah, this is interesting. And let's go back and change this.
Because the above 0 numbers are for when you're rounding decimals, and once you start moving to negatives, it's moved into like the whole numbers, I guess.
Wow, cool. Well, thank you. I learned something new today. Let's see if it works. Yeah, it's still getting 17, but let's try the -1. Yeah, exactly.
Not sure if that's to tens or hundreds. If that works. Huh, okay. Weird.
Well, not S, C. I wonder if we set up like the same exact numbers here. So we'll say age 1 is ages equals array. This is a Ruby method, right? So maybe if we go, we shovel in the same ages that we're looking at in our code. And we do ages round 2. Oh, yeah, that won't work. Never mind.
I just set in I set y equal to 17.6 because I figured that's probably close to what
Good idea.
I'm looking at maybe there. And then I did y dot round parentheses 0 and it raised it to 18.
Yep, that makes sense. That's good research. If this were like a production app, or if I had something like a project I was working on, I would want to go into that in more detail and make really robust tests just to make sure that everything was acting like, make sure that my math is good, because if I don't write tests for my math, it's not going to be good. Thank you, Jordan. That's useful information. I'm definitely going to spend some of my own time looking into how that works. For now, though, I think we'll go back to how we had it. Yeah, anything else? Katie?
So in our professor model, when we create the method average age of students, we don't need to select the students at all correct? We could just call average, because we're looking at the whole population of students. So we wouldn't need to call like students dot select age dot average.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think we have to. I think this works absolutely fine, and would be within what we would expect for this independent challenge. To your point, though, I wonder if we could do something to make this more efficient. Maybe we don't want the entire, maybe we can just grab the student age column and average that. Let's see, curious, did anyone else goof on this, not read the instructions at all and do a one-to-many relationship? Fun story, last week I was going through this to make sure like it made sense and there were no bugs, and I did that exact same thing. So no, it wasn't just, if you did that, it wasn't just you. Cool. Yeah, so let's see. Katie, do you want to try to like do a select here and see if we can just like make this a more efficient query? I haven't tried it, so we'd be experimenting together.
Yeah, so if we did students dot select and then parentheses age, and then dot average, and then in parentheses after that age.
Good stuff. Let's see. I think we can run our professor spec again to double check that that works, right? Oh, we need to put this back on. My bad. Yeah, that looks good. It would be cool to see this query. I wonder if we can try that in Rails. See, I forget, it should give us the SQL, right? Let's try it. So professor, just grab one. Yeah. Actually, let me clean this up. Select average students age from students and or join professor students on student ID. Professor students, student ID where, yeah. Yeah, I think that that's probably a better approach. I wouldn't have necessarily expected everybody to get this in the time challenge, but a good observation. Thank you, Katie. Adam?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of confirm my understanding. The reason like on line 6 that we know that it's only averaging the ages of the professor or the students associated with that professor is because in another place we're calling the method on the average age of students on an instance of professors.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's exactly right. We know that this is running on a specific instance of professor, and one way that we can illustrate that or confirm that is putting a pry in here. We should hit that if we run this. And then Adam, I'll answer your question with a question. What do you expect self to be?
Right here. It should just be the professor with the student. It should be the instance of the professor.
Yeah, I expect that too. And it looks like it is, right? If I move my window and I can see my screen. Yeah, this is Lupin. This is the only one I made with the name Lupin. And that's what self is. So if I just run students here, I get all of the students that I set up in the test to be associated with Lupin. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm still just kind of, yeah, I think it does. I think I've had trouble understanding like why sometimes you can grab all the associations between one thing that's like in another thing, I guess, if that makes sense. And then I guess other times I'm using the class. And so I think I'm getting confused about those and like what I can do to each object, but this is starting to clear it up.
Yeah, okay, good, I'm glad. I get that. It's really one of the hardest things for me, like in learning Rails was, or even actually, sorry, in Ruby, like I remember this being a struggle for me in Mod 1 was trying to like understand the difference between an instance and a class. And then you get to Rails and there's all this behavior that's kind of like dependent on whether you're using instance methods or class methods. So it's mind bending for sure. But this is, I would definitely recommend if you're if you're hoping you have access to something, but you're not 100% sure, like an association, putting in a pry and just seeing what self is and what you can run on that instance or that class, whichever it may be, is a good first place to start, or a good place to start, a good first step. Okay. Other questions or thoughts? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I do feel like we went longer than, I'm not exactly sure if this was supposed to be the full 2 hours, but we got through the user stories. I hope that was helpful for people. Hopefully this was helpful. And if you got stuck on any of these things or they were a little bit tricky or took more time than you would have liked, this provides some clarity. But yeah, if there are any follow-up questions that y'all think of, please feel free to post them in Slack or send them to me, and I'll be happy to go through that.
That's great. Thank you, Jameson.
Thanks everybody.
Jameson.